All right. So are you recording?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome to RPG Quest, the podcast where we do not play D&D. And on this episode, again, we're diving into the horrific, the ancient, and the eldritch horror as we look at Call of Cthulhu once more. My name is Chris. I am the host and GM, and I guess in this case, since we're playing Cthulhu, the keeper of the podcast. But again, the real stars of the show, as always, are our players. And joining me for this one, for this little episode, is, what do I call you? Outlaw Panda? Panda?
Panda's fine.
Panda's fine. Cool. Awesome. Coming to us live from China.
Yeah, Shenyang, China, for now.
So because of that, we will be playing online, just because of distance. Some of the episodes will be online. Some of the other episodes, I'm sure you'll notice, will be in person when we have the opportunity to. But because of that, we're going to be using Roll20 to do our rolls and to do our character creation and the actual play and all that sort of stuff. This episode is going to be like a little bonus episode for you guys. We're just going to go through step by step how to make a character, kind of what all the skills are, and put all that together before we actually jump into our scenario. So if you don't really want to sit through the whole character creation, I completely understand. You can just skip forward to the next episode where we actually get stuck into our adventure. And of course, if you want to listen back to the previous episode, I did an interview with YouTube content creator Seth Skorkowski. We sort of went through kind of the sales pitch of like, what is Call of Cthulhu, kind of a basics on how it works, and kind of a little look at the genre and the kind of style of game that it is. And sort of piggybacking off that, we kind of discussed that there are a couple of different kinds of styles of game that you can really run with this. I mean, a lot of people associate it with like 1920s, which is the default sort of setting. And, the players are called investigators. So you kind of think about, I'm playing a PI in the 1920s. It doesn't have to be that at all. And we sort of talk a lot about that. Although for this one, I wanted to do for the first one, I did kind of want to do that setting. So we are going to do a 1920s, I guess, a PI style adventure. And I also wanted to do it as just a one-on-one and kind of lean into that trope of actually doing a, having a private investigator, sort of investigating a mystery and maybe uncovering some truths to the universe that he didn't know were there, and maybe dying, maybe going insane. But I think a lot of people get scared about Call of Cthulhu, that it's very deadly and everyone's going to lose their minds and the players are going to kill all the other players and there are no good endings, which can be true depending on the scenario. But you can also run it. It doesn't have to be completely deadly. You can run, I think, quite a successful campaign with just 1 or 2 or 3 players and not die. You just kind of have to be smart about it, run away instead of fighting, hiding, instead of engaging the monsters. And just kind of, I guess a good rule of thumb might be something like, if you wouldn't do it in real life, maybe don't necessarily try and do it,
I mean, character death can be fun as well when you're like pushing the limits on things. I know in my experience with Blades, I definitely don't mind that at all. I've had a lot of characters trauma out or die because it's, drive it like you stole it.
Oh, and those moments are going to be epic. That's what horror's all about. I guess it's just in a one-on-one, you kind of end up cutting the story a little too short, which can suck. So I hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, because of that, we're going to be running an adventure set in New Orleans in the year 1926, which will be called Tell Me, Have You Seen the Yellow Sign? I think you have a little bit of a character concept in mind, which we'll get to in a bit. But first, we're actually just going to pull up the character sheet and we're going to go through step by step the stats and all that sort of good stuff. So if you pull up your Roll20 character sheet.
All right. For now, I see a sample one.
Yeah, do you see one? I think we just use the pre-generated name, which is like Woodroy Puno or something.
Yeah, Woodroy Puno. Yeah.
It's actually kind of a cool name, Woodroy. There are a couple of different methods to character creation. You can roll for your stats. You can use like a point buy method. Or the third one is a quick fire method, which is what I like to do and which is what we're going to do for this one. I think it's a little easier and it, I think, makes more of a balanced character. For instance, you're not going to run the risk of rolling really low or, you can roll really high, but in my experience, that hardly ever happens.
Yeah, more likely you're going to roll low.
So the first thing you do is your characteristics or stats or attributes, whatever you want to call them. These are your big main skills for your character. You'll find them at the top of the character sheet, whatever kind of version of the character sheet you're using. You have strength, constitution, size, dexterity, appearance, intelligence, power, education, and luck. I think some of them are pretty self-explanatory. I guess there are differences. There are things like strength and size. If you have a high size score, you kind of get bonuses to your melee attacks or your punching, or if you're using a melee weapon, you might get a little extra bonus to that. I might ask for for a size roll in certain instances. Otherwise, if you're sort of barging down a door, it'll probably be strength. You have intelligence and education. Education is things that you had to study to learn. Intelligence is just your raw, natural intellect. Power is the interesting one that's obviously unique to Call of Cthulhu. Power is used to do things like cast spells, if we're playing that sort of campaign. But it also might just kind of be passive. Maybe monsters might drain your power ability. I might ask for a power roll if someone's trying to cast a spell on you to maybe, take over your mind, or if a monster is some kind of eldritch horror is trying to do something to you. Or it might even just kind of act almost like a passive kind of shiver ability. Maybe it's just your intrinsic sense to tap into some kind of cosmic energy that is unseen, which is really cool. And then the final skill is luck, which is really cool. So it does work like a normal skill. Like you roll your dice, you want to, succeed on that roll. I might call for a luck roll, say if you're in a conflict and you want to, maybe is there a weapon nearby that I can just quickly grab to knock this guy out? Well, roll luck and let's see what's nearby. It might be maybe you're driving somewhere and I'm going to ask for a luck roll and you sort of stop and you need to go to the bathroom at that particular awkward point. Or maybe you just like to avoid a pothole or just bad things happening. But the other way luck works, which is really cool, is you can actually spend luck to make other rolls. So we talked about the mechanics previously in the previous episode. Well, I did with Seth. But Call of Cthulhu runs on a D100 system. So your stats are sort of going to be anywhere between 40 to 80 or maybe even 90. You roll a D100 and you want to roll under that. So if you had a 50 in strength, you sort of got a 50% chance to succeed. You roll your D100, you want to get under a 50. So the higher your stat, the more of a chance you have to succeed. Throughout the adventure, you can spend luck points to make up the difference of a failure. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say you needed this strength roll and you're trying to get under 50 and you rolled a 52. Almost a success, not quite. You can spend 2 of the points out of your luck skill to turn that into a success. But that comes out of your luck stat. So if your luck was at that point 50, it's now going to become 48 because you've spent those points and it's a pool and you don't get them back. So as you spend luck, your luck runs out, and thus as the adventure goes on, it becomes harder to succeed in luck rolls because your luck literally gets used up, which I think is a really cool mechanic.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting thing to happen. I'm sure it would be enjoyable to say, oh, well, my luck has officially run out. Let's see how this plays.
Yeah, exactly. And there'll be those decisions where you're like, oh, I really want to succeed in this role. I failed. This is a do or die moment. I'm going to spend my luck. You can spend as much as you want. You could spend 20 points of luck if you had them and really whittle down that luck. But, there might come a crucial moment where you need to make a luck roll later and you wished you had that stat a little higher. So we're going to do the quickfire rules. So the way quickfire rules work, on all those core stats, you have a set number. I guess if you've played D&D like most people have, you get I think they call it standard array. So this is that kind of version. So one of those skills will be a 40, then you have 3 50s, 2 60s, a 70, and then your top skill has an 80. So I think maybe the best way to do this as we get started on your character. So maybe think about what's going to be your best skill, what's going to be your worst skill, and then kind of fill in the middle accordingly based on what you have left. So what do you think would be your character's top skill?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good question. Coming up with the character concept, I didn't think too much about how it would translate into actual die. I don't think he's incredibly strong. I do think he's probably fairly intelligent, like average education, but fairly intelligent, like emotional intelligence. But appearance might be one of the low stats, as he's had a rough time of it the last couple years.
Oh, so maybe we would put appearance as a 40?
Yeah, could be.
Great.
I imagine time and his choices have taken its toll.
All right. Well, let's do that. Let's put appearance as 40. Appearance is good. It's one of those skills. It might be used in an active way if you're trying to, maybe seduce someone or something like that. But I also might occasionally just ask for an appearance roll, like when you walk into a room, just to see how you're generally received. You know what I mean? With sort of what state you're in.
Yeah. I mean, it might be interesting if you're, he's a detective. As discussed earlier, and if he walks into a room and immediately like, okay, you look like a bum.
Yeah.
That might affect things negatively. Could be interesting.
Exactly. All right. So we'll put appearance as 40. What do you think would be your top stat? You could go intelligence. If he's not strong, I know he's an ex-war guy, he could be quite dexterous as well. Or constitution. Constitution's always very handy. So when you take damage, a lot of the time, if you take a big wound, I might ask for a constitution roll to see whether or not you actually pass out.
Okay, fair enough.
So that can be pretty crucial when it comes to the crunch as well.
I mean, again, considering the amount of time that he's been battered around and battered himself around, constitution might be his high point. I do think he's quite intelligent, but I don't think he's absolutely brilliant or anything that would justify an 80.
Okay, so let's go.
So yeah, maybe Constitution.
80 in Constitution. Excellent. Now let's think about your 70, your second highest. Would that maybe be Intelligence?
Yeah, I think that one might be Intelligence.
Beautiful. Maybe let's just go through the others. What do you think about Strength? So 50 would be an average. You've got 50s and 60s left.
Yeah, I think he's about average strength.
About average?
Probably average strength, average size.
Average strength, average size. Let's put 50s in those. Dexterity, would that be a 50 or 60?
Yeah, maybe a 60 in his dexterity.
60 in his dexterity, and then the last two we've got power and education. You said he doesn't have a great education, so you've got 150 left.
Yeah, I'll go with that last 50 for education, which I guess leaves 60 for power.
And then 60 in power? Yeah. And then your power skill is also going to be, I believe, your sanity skill. So you're going to have 60 points of sanity as the game goes on. And the way sanity works is if you see something shocking or terrible or even supernatural or evil, I'll ask for a sanity roll to see if you keep your wits about you or not.
All right.
And as the game goes on, the more sort of hectic stuff that happens, your sanity is something that whittles down throughout the scenario.
That whole going mad thing. Looking forward to that. I see on the quickfire that luck is something you can't mess with. Is that going to be auto-generated with the quickfire, or how does that work? Is it a pool of your stats? Oh,
we're gonna roll for luck to see how much luck you have.
All right.
So that's the final skill. Yeah. So that doesn't count for the quickfire. The way we'll roll when we get to it, when you roll for a stat, you roll 3d6. And then you times that by 5.
All right.
So if you rolled a 10, you'd have 50 luck. If you rolled an 11, you'd have 55. It's sort of that kind of thing. The lowest it can be, I think, is like 30, and the highest would be 90.
90 would be a hell of a lucky guy.
Extremely lucky. So once we've got that, we're going to choose our age. And now age is something that actually comes with modifiers. I know you've kind of got your concept, so you kind of got your age, but I'm going to explain this anyway. It's actually kind of more important because depending on your age, the older you are, your education stat might go up and your strength, constitution, and dexterity may actually go down. You might get both. You're sort of reflecting if you're an older guy, you're a little bit less dexterous, but you're a little bit more learned. And if you play really young, like if you want to play a kid like 15, 16, 17, you actually end up removing points from your strength, size, and education. But the benefit of being young, if you did want to play a very young guy, you get to roll your luck twice and pick the better value. So younger guys, while they're a little bit smaller, are luckier, which is cool.
Yeah.
So you're going to be, did we say about 38, 39?
Yeah, I think about theirs. Kind of right tracks the what we're going with.
Cool. Sounds good. So if you want to put in, say, is it 38?
Yeah.
So if you're within the age range of 20 to 39, you get to make an improvement check to your education. So you make an improvement roll by making an education check. You roll a D100, you want to get under your education skill. And if you pass, you get to add 1d10 improvement points to your education attribute.
Nice.
So yeah, you can make an improvement check by rolling a D100 for your education skill.
Oh, nice. All right.
Amazing. That's like a critical success.
That was a surprisingly really good roll.
8. So you get another 8 to your education. So that's going to bump up to 58.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
First roll. Let's hopefully this luck can keep up throughout the game. We'll see. Now, the next step is you choose your occupation. There are a bunch of occupations in the in the Investigator Handbook. They have details for like many more modern ones, old ones. You can even sort of make up your own if you want to. But one of the ones in there, and I think the one that we're going to pick would be Private Investigator, right?
Yeah.
These occupations...
There we go. It populated.
Oh, nice. So the different occupations give you a certain amount of skill points to apply. And it also determines for you your starting credit rating. So credit rating is a skill in Call of Cthulhu, which is essentially how much cash you have on hand to spend throughout the scenario, and also like how much you have in assets. So that might determine whether or not you have a car. You use that money to buy sort of starting equipment, and also just being able to buy things throughout the adventure. And also, maybe you need to borrow something from someone. You're like, hey, can I get a loan, or can I get this on tick? And I swear I'll pay you back. I'm good for it. Well, make a credit rating roll, and let's see if they go along with it. Private Investigator classically does not have a great credit rating, of course.
Makes sense.
You're always kind of working hand in mouth, right?
Yeah.
So let's go that. Private Investigator, it tells you, so each character now gets 2 pools of skill points to spend on the large array of skills that you find down below your main attributes. One is your career pool, which you can only spend on the skills that are relevant from your career that you get given, and you choose from a small little list, and then you can spend that pool on those ones. Then you have a pool of personal skill points, which you can then use, which you can then spread across every single skill in sort of any way you want. These are the things skills you've learned in your own life, as opposed to the ones as your career as a private investigator. So the ones that come with a private investigator, you can see are photography, of course, disguise, law, library use, which is just general research, looking stuff up, psychology, and spot hidden. Psychology is, determining some sort of being able to suss someone out. It's more of a vibe check. What do you make of this guy? Do you think they're pulling your leg? Are they being honest? How are they feeling right now? I'm trying to assess someone. And spot hidden is just your general notice skill, just trying to see what's going on, look for hidden clues, maybe notice something in your peripheral, that kind of thing. So very useful skill.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking through some of these.
Yeah, if you choose the way your skill points are calculated, it'll be education times 2 plus dex or strength times 2. Dex is your highest out of dex and strength. So you tick that one, education times 2 plus dex times 2, which will be 220. skill points to spend. Then on top of these skills that are gifted to you in your career choice, the photography, disguise, etc., law, you get to pick 2 other interpersonal skills that you think might be very useful. The first one that you can choose from, you've got charm, which is self-explanatory, fast talk, which is less like charm and more like your ability to bullshit, intimidate, and persuade.
I think I would go with fast talk.
Yeah, makes sense for a private detective. And then you get to pick one more skill from all the kind of skills. You've got accounting. A lot of them are very sort of geared towards the 1920s Lovecraftian sort of thing.
Yeah.
You can create your own sort of customizable sort of specializations. You'll see things like firearms. You can pick a particular type of firearms, or languages. You can pick a language. Sciences. You can, if you want to specialize it, you can create your own little subset of, like, if you're a physicist or a chemist or something like that. That works. But then, you've got all your other sort of basic ones, things like stealth, sleight of hand, drive auto if you want to be a good driver, counting, which is, obviously being good with numbers, anthropology, appraise. So that's sort of obviously very geared towards those styles of adventures where you're like, we're going to investigate a mummy's tomb. How much is this worth?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Belongs in a museum. Yeah, that whole thing.
This artwork's fake.
I like that electrical repair is in here. That's great.
Oh, yeah. And there's, I think there's stuff like operate heavy machinery, all kinds of stuff. Some good things in there.
Yeah, all right. I've got a question. So, spot hidden and track. What would you, short answer to find the difference between those two?
Oh, track is so spot hidden's just noticing stuff. Track is like hunting, like looking at footprints, tracking someone through the forest, maybe making some sort of more outdoorsy kind of. Is there already a survival skill?
Yeah, survival specialization.
There is survival if you want to make something a bit more specialized, but track is just generally, track might be looking for some tire marks, looking for signs through trees of activity, that kind of thing.
I ask because I'm certainly drawn to track. It seems to fit, but if it was a double up with find hidden, then I wouldn't take it.
It kind of, I mean, in some scenarios, it probably kind of is, It's there's sort of, a lot of these have kind of a bit of a DM fiat about, what I would ask for. A lot of the times a spot hidden might actually do in lieu of a track.
Well, I'm torn between psychoanalysis and track, again, for the character flavor of it.
Okay.
With spot hidden in there, maybe I'll go with psychoanalysis, and it could be a really funny moment when he can't follow tire tracks.
Let me look up, because psychology and psychoanalysis are obviously very different. I'm just going to very quickly pull up what psychoanalysis is in the actual book. Yes, here we are. So psychology is like a perception to study someone and kind of form an idea about their character, right? Psychoanalysis is more like it's like emotional therapies.
Okay.
So it's almost more like procedures, like being an analyst, trying to see if someone has an emotional disorder, how to help someone. You can even help people sort of recover sanity points if they've been through traumatic experiences.
Okay, so not incredibly useful in this exact setup, probably.
Probably not.
I was definitely reading it more as being able to kind of quickly analyze people, like what's this person's tick.
I would say a psychology
would cover that.
If you're trying to get a quick read on and form an idea about someone, psychology would be that one which you've got. Yeah. Some other ones might be useful just to think about for a detective might be listen, if you're sort of sneaking around, or stealth if you want to stalk people.
Oh, yeah.
Driving might be useful if you're trying to tail a car and not get noticed. Stuff like that is always pretty good.
All right. Let's go with drive then. Why not?
Drive auto. Let's go with that. Now, all the other skills that you haven't picked, you will be able to still put points into them, drawing from your personal points. So your career pool is going to be a little bit higher. I think it's going to be somewhere between 200 to 240 points to spend. And then your personal skill points are a little bit lower in number, but you can spend them on anything. This reflects stuff that you've picked up in your personal life rather than just through your career.
All right. That makes sense.
So I think you have 140 personal points to spend now as well. Everyone has all the skills have a base if you look. So accounting the base will be 5%. Charm, everyone just has a base of 15%. And then now as we sort of spread those skills out throughout them, you'll choose which ones you want to beef up to be quite high and what ones are going to keep low. So now this is where you can sort of build your detective and shape him more the way you think he will be. If he's good at, how good is he at sort of psychology? How good is he at talking bullshit, fast talk? How good is he at spot hidden? How good is he with firearms? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you need me to explain any of the skills, just let me know.
No, I think I'm just gonna... So occupational is 231 to spend and personal is 140.
Yeah, so you can divvy those out as you see fit, and then we'll come back and do a little bit of backstory. All right, so we've got our stats, our age, our occupation, and our skills all sorted. That's the more fiddly stuff kind of out of the way. The next part is creating your backstory, and this is the fun stuff. This is kind of like what makes you interesting and fun to play. We get to delve into all kinds of stuff. We get personal description, your character's ideology and beliefs, some significant people in their life, meaningful locations, possessions. It's not really essential to have an entry for each of these categories as they're more sort of flavor. But, the more that you're able to fill these out, I guess the more the more your investigator comes to life. But it's also stuff that I can play with in the game as well. You might have like a horrifying moment where you see a vision of an important character or something like that. Whereas the other ones like, ideology and beliefs and things like that, they're sort of, it's kind of role play flavor, but it's fun. Let's start with the easy stuff though and get that out of the way. Gender.
Yeah, he's a guy.
Hometown. So there's hometown and there's birthplace. So hometown will probably be, where you're born might not necessarily be where you sort of grew up or where you're currently living or something like that. I know you've just moved to New Orleans, so we probably wouldn't put New Orleans as your hometown. We probably have, where you've spent the majority of your life there as hometown, which might be separate from birthplace.
Yeah. I was thinking he's from Peoria, which at that time would be like the second largest city in Illinois. But he might have still been born in Chicago, as he does end up there at some point. So I'll go with that.
So you're going to go with Chicago for both hometown and birthplace?
I think I'm going to stick with Peoria for hometown, but Chicago for birthplace.
Mm-hmm. And what about personal description? Have we filled that out?
Oh man, yeah, I'm always bad at personal description. It's that thing where it's like you just find a photo that works instead of typing 1,000 words. But
of course.
But I am definitely leaning into him being kind of the cliche grizzled private eye who's very much down on his luck, like almost a Booker DeWitt type. So he would have that look, mid-30s, probably looks a bit older, hasn't shaved in a few days. Probably reeks of whiskey. Decent clothes, but they obviously haven't been pressed and cleaned for some time. Of course, he's wearing like the Trilby hat. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, ideology and beliefs. This is something that you can make up for your character, or there is a list that you can choose from, like a random table in the book, or if you're playing on Roll20, there's a drop-down menu on the character sheet. There are all kinds of interesting ones. Things like there's a higher power that you worship and pray to, like you might be religious. Maybe you're a campaigner or an activist. You have something like maybe it's union power or feminism or something like that. I think for the sake of you following through the steps in the book, which is what we're doing, maybe we'll select something from the list. So do you have an idea of what your character's core ideologies and beliefs might be?
Yeah, I think probably he was certainly raised in what would have been a fairly standard family at that time, so he's probably raised Christian. at least in that area of the U.S., but, fighting in the trenches and becoming a corrupt cop after, and all the things I'm sure he's seen. I feel like he'd be fairly misanthropic, probably would have lost any sort of faith, which might make it interesting when you run into Eldritch Horrors, because I doubt he'll believe they're real.
So would we say mankind can do fine without religions?
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, let's take that. That's sort of the quote that the book gives you. Mankind can do fine without religions. And you can kind of fill it out if you want to make it a bit more specific and personal to your character.
I'm just going to type disillusioned, because I think that sums it up pretty well.
Beautiful. The next is meaningful locations. Is there a meaningful location to your investigator?
So this is an interesting question, I think, because there would be a couple places I could probably list if the setting was in Chicago. But as it is going to be in New Orleans, I think the only location that would be meaningful to him would be the office.
Well, you can pick a meaningful location from Chicago. It can be your hometown or your family home, or even just a place that might be for contemplation, or just something that was, significant. Maybe the place where you were sort of happiest in your life, something like that. It doesn't have to be connected to the current setting that we're going to be in.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, when you said the place where he was probably happiest, that kind of rings true as something he would probably cherish, that thing you can never really go back to or get. So yeah, that makes sense, which would mean probably somewhere in Peoria. We can just go with hometown.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be more significant, it could be the place where you met your now estranged wife.
Yeah. The place you were happiest in your life. Yeah, going with that.
Yeah, well, what is the place?
Yeah, the suggestion that maybe it's where he met his wife definitely seems like it would fit the character, but I think it would be more probably when he first saw his kids.
Ooh.
So maybe not that hospital, but maybe the old family home when the rest of the family were meeting the kids for the first time.
The old family home where you lived with your wife and children.
Yeah.
Now, significant people. Is this going to be, it could be children, it could be your wife, it could even just be a friend.
Yeah, I think for one, I'm going to go with the kids. And then for a second choice, the friend that is his connection to New Orleans, which shared experience. Yeah, they served in the war together.
So you have 2 children, is that right?
Yeah, I'm just going to write in the kids in the second. It gives you a possible hook. Yeah, or it might just be a backstory thing, but
yeah,
I'll put it out there.
Awesome. And your wartime friend, you'd say your connection is that you're indebted to them. They helped you get you this job, right, when you were down on your luck.
Yeah, that's true. I went with shared experience, but I think indebted probably makes more sense. That fits a little bit better. Because they're essentially pulling him out of the gutter almost,
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. And now we get to pick something cool. We get to pick a treasured possession that you'll have in this game.
Yeah, let's make him sentimental. An old journal of some kind, maybe a stack of letters.
Ooh, just a stack of letters to someone in particular?
Well, I was thinking, because when we discussed the backstory a little bit, he volunteered to go over and be some of the first American servers in World War I. So I would assume at that point he still had a pretty good relationship with his family, and those letters would be probably from his family. Maybe it's some that when the kids were first learning to write, they would send him. Maybe he was only there for 2 years. But when he came back is when things went to shit. So I think he would still hold on to that as there's still some good. And again, make him a little bit sentimental.
Letters from the war. And the last thing, we're going to pick a trait. They do give you a sort of a list to choose from in the book. You can obviously kind of make something up, but the ones that they give you are things like generous, good with animals. Maybe you're a hedonist or a dreamer or a gambler and a risk taker. A ladies' man, maybe not your one.
Yeah, probably not.
Things like ambitious. I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's good with animals. It's an easy go-to. He's already, so dark in his soul at this moment. I don't want to push that anymore.
Good with animals.
I don't think he's a hedonist. He does drink too much. I don't think he's a hedonist per se. Who doesn't like dogs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good with animals is good. I'll see if I can work that in. That's a great hook. So we sort of have those prompts. Why don't you? Well, I guess before I'll ask for the full rundown on the backstory. But let's finally. I'm going to ask what is your character's name?
Oh yeah. I think I'm going to go with Jackson Cassidy, and assuming people just call him Jack.
Jackie boy, Jackson or Jack Cassidy.
Seems like a
perfect. I love it.
Solid detective name.
Yeah, well, why don't you give me we sort of filled in those. You've sort of got some clues there with the significant people and the treasured items. But let's go through just, I guess, a bit of a quick rundown. If you can give me the quick little bio on who is Jack Cassidy and how did he end up in New Orleans down on his luck?
Yeah. Well, I think, especially when he was young, as we discussed, he was born in Peoria, which is a fairly large city at the time, but not huge. It's what then it would have been like 20, 30,000 people, which then was a big city, but not that big. So I think he kind of had the kind of normal childhood in the sense that they weren't like well off, but they weren't starving either. Probably good family life. He did the normal, I guess, average thing, got out of school, decided to become a police officer, as that was his interest, was married early, had kids, and of course World War I broke out, and I think he's the kind of guy who felt like a sense of duty, maybe just the way he was raised, or the fact that he was a police officer, and before there was any kind of draft or anything, enlisted, volunteered for the AEF, and went overseas and joined the Brits. So I think that was only about 2 years, but he would have been deployed into the trenches. When he was in the trenches, I can only guess, as happened to so many people horribly, he was probably gassed with chlorine, which some people survived, but not that many, and ended up in a military hospital. So he certainly has, the sadly classic shell shock. I think when he got home is when he started drinking to deal with shell shock and moved to Chicago to try to make a bit more money and became a detective after being decorated from the war. He got the promotion. But that time in Chicago is right when Prohibition was starting to kick off. So I imagine with his kind of shattered self at that point and his desire to drink, he ended up on the wrong side of that, and ended up a little bit dirty, and took some payoffs and some bribes from like Johnny Torrio, prior to Al Capone. I think Al Capone was the late 20s, and yeah, became more and more corrupt.
So he was a detective with the Chicago PD.
That's what I'm thinking. And as things got worse, it became obvious that he was corrupt, and he was probably fairly quietly, because at that time, it wasn't a big show if we're getting rid of this officer for corruption unless they were a big name. I don't think he was a big name. So he probably quietly lost his badge. Probably about that point, between the shell shock of the corruption and the drinking, probably when he lost the family, ended up essentially in the gutter with nowhere to go, and likely fearing the decisions he'd made by helping out the Chicago outfit. And at that point, without too many choices left, is probably when he talked to his old war buddy and found his way in New Orleans, hoping to start over, present himself as still respectable, maybe clean himself up a little bit, or maybe meet an eldritch horror and die horribly or go insane. But I think his intention is not that, so...
Now, I'll just ask, obviously this is the 1920s, so divorce was exceptionally rare. I think almost, unless there were cases of adultery or abuse, almost impossible. So would you say that you're still married to your wife? She's just left?
Right. I say divorced because that's more common now. But of that time, I think it's more, she's left, she's not coming back. He probably has sent her a lot of letters or tried to contact her or find her. She doesn't want to be found. They're certainly permanently separated, but I don't think they're, I guess for that time, divorced.
Yeah.
Which might be the thing that gives him some hope. If I can get my shit together.
Yeah. Maybe this job that you've now with, if you can get a steady income and a place to stay here in New Orleans and start a new, clean, fresh life, you might be able to turn things around. Well, that is exactly where we're going to begin our adventure on the next episode when we start with the actual play. There is one final thing we need to do for your character, which we haven't done, and I figured I'd leave it till last, and that is your actual luck skill, which we haven't filled out, I don't think. So the way you do luck in Call of Cthulhu, you roll 3d6, and then, like the other skills, we times it by 5. So yeah, we'll finish this off with one final roll, and maybe this will kind of set the tone for the coming adventure. Let's see how lucky Jack Cassidy is going to be.
Oof. Well, my 3d6 is an 8.
Oh, very poetic. 2 1s and a 6. Oh no. So 40 luck. It's not terrible, but not the worst, but not the best.
I do appreciate though that when rolling for luck, it's the worst and the best rolled together.
Yes, I know. Very poetic. 2 1s and a 6. All right. Well, that's where we'll leave things for now, and we'll start the next episode and see what Jack Cassidy is up to with his new life in New Orleans.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it.